Okay, ladies and gentlemen, apologies for that. Some strange tech issues there. Unfortunately, I was unable to unmute myself through OBS, and everything was kind of frozen as well. So I was unable to even end the stream. I had to end it through a task manager and force the end of it. But we are here, guys. It is myself, Mike Edwards, as well as Colin Mason, here for round number 7 of the championship as we take in the Chinese Grand Prix. Of course, a sprint race call, and you was mentioning as well just before we had to cut away that of course some people have taken engine penalties. Now I didn't want to interrupt the flow, so I'm going to let you finish on who has taken the engine penalties here tonight.
Yes, no problem. So, Mike, just feeling sympathy for Ferrari and having technical difficulties as well. So let's have a look to see who is taking their engine penalties this evening. So, hang on, as my phone decides it doesn't want to play ball. Bear with me 2 seconds. Sorry, Mike, chat amongst yourselves, guys. My phone has decided to crash.
Yes, well, I mean, I can also bring it up as well. Obviously, the engine and gearbox penalty is going to be taken here in P2 for tonight. Of course, Jess taking the engine and gearbox penalty. J. Luke taking the engine and gearbox penalty. Joe taking the engine and gearbox penalty. And Muse taking a gearbox penalty only. So 3 drivers taking both engine and gearbox. Jess, J. Luke, Joe. That's 3 very, very quick drivers in this tier. Going to be starting towards the back of the field, Cole.
Yeah, that's going to be really interesting watching them fight back through. So, just to remind everyone, an engine is 10 places and a gearbox is 5. So, Jess, J, Luke and Joe are going to have 15 places dropped for the main feature race, and Muse, just as gearbox, will just be the 5. So, it's going to be really, there's, quick drivers. So they're going to be want to fight through the field, Mike, and it's a good track to do overtaking on.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, there is that. I believe it's 1 kilometer long, the straight, of course, leading down in towards turn 14, where we're going to be seeing a lot of the overtaking action in towards the hard braking zone at turn 14, Cole. But obviously, DRS gets activated around about a third of the way down that straight. So really, for you to really want to make sure that you're getting that move done and dusted before the braking, you need a brilliant run out of the snail corner at 12 and 13.
Yeah, definitely, but isn't it a tricky corner? It's so easy to lose the back end, and if you get a little bit of oversteer, you've lost that run then, so it's going to be really tricky for these drivers. At least they don't have to worry about any wet weather, but it's still going to be quite difficult to follow, because dirty air on this game is quite strong, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely, and dirty air is going to play a key factor, especially in that middle sector, Cole. But of course, with it being a sprint qualifying, we jump into one shot qualifying to set up the grid for the sprint race, and of course we'll be having the feature race coming just in a moment's time after it. Hopefully, fingers crossed that me having to shut down OBS and then restart it hasn't messed with the audio sync with the Elgato. So that's fingers crossed on that one, as we look to get into qualifying in just a moment's time. And of course, after qualifying is done, we will be going through the championship standings and so forth. But Cole, all dry. The driver's going to be very pleased with that.
Oh yes, I think so. And I just love one-shot quali. The pressure of it. One small mistake, and that is you at the back of the grid. I love watching one-shot quali. I'm not sure how keen the drivers will be, because they know that one small mistake means it's curtains and they're going to be near the back. So it's going to be really important for these to get a good, clean lap in. But getting corner cutting penalties on you, Mike, is not too bad. It's not somewhere like Imola or Zandvoort where it's very easy.
Yeah, definitely not. I mean, realistically, the final corner and maybe at the double left-handers where you're going to see most of the invalidations come from. But we're on board with Papa Squanch heading down the starting straight in towards turn number 1, trying to drift it out just a little bit right to tuck it back in for turn number 2. And then, of course, the hard braking for the left-hander there for turn number 3. All about traction coming out of turn number 3 as you head down into the first sector split as we head towards turn number 5. And, of course, it's going to be a 27.0 there for Papa Squanch. Now, Papa Squanch, a very quick driver in the TR call. And, obviously, he's a guy that you would expect to see at the top. And in this middle sector, this is where he's finding his time.
Yes, obviously the winner last out weekend at One Hub, so he's on form. He's got confidence. He's currently though at this point down in 7th place, so I don't think he's going to be very happy with that as he comes into the chicane. So important to get it right. A really good exit there from Papa Squanch. That'll give him really good speed. But look at the timing board. He's down in 9th. He's actually dropped places. Like, here's the kilometre straight that Mike was talking about. There's the DRS line. Floor it now. Pick your braking point. Don't brake too late. Don't lock the inside front. Papa, good apex there from Papa Squanch as we head to the final corner. Mike, such a tricky corner. Does he keep it in the track limits? Yes, he does.
Yeah, he does, but you saw there, just got dragged a little bit further out, and that just upset the momentum coming off that corner. But he does end up in P5. I believe we may have seen a few invalidations in the final corner. But Papa Squanch can be happy with that lap. And the one man who can be happy with that lap is JR Mason on pole position for the sprint race with a 31.2, just over half a tenth ahead of Joe, who will join him on the front row. Sano there in 3rd with Rich in 4th. Papa Squanch in 5th with Funky in 6th. J Luke 7th. Jamie in 8th. 9th is M125. And then Quinn running at the top 10. Outside the top 10, we have Skrillex, Jess, Proverb, and Geese. And of course, the two drivers who unfortunately were unable to get lap times on the board was Leroy and Mathis there.
What a lap from Mason. I didn't see that coming. You know, Joe and Salo, Rich, yeah, expected that. Yeah, that wasn't a shock. But Mason up there getting another pole. I think that's his 9th One Hub Racing pole now. Mike, can he convert it into a sprint race win? He's had a feature race win. He's never had a sprint win.
Well, I mean, that's where we're going to find out because obviously we've done some practice earlier. And I can say Joe is looking pretty rapid around here, I might add. And this race call, I mean, it's one of those tracks where if you fall out with DRS, it's pretty much a wrap at that point.
Yeah, it's really important to stay in DRS, and if you do lose DRS, you're in trouble, and you need to rethink your strategy. Maybe come in the pits, get some softer tires on. But it's going to be, like you said, Mike, it's so important to stay in that DRS 1 second. It is crucial for these drivers. I expect to see all the drivers on the medium tyre, Mike, for this sprint. Will anyone risk it on the softs, do you think?
Absolutely not. Historically, and even on this game, we all know the soft tyres, they do not last long at China. There's always an overheating issue as well with the soft tyres and just general wear. Like, the soft tyres are definitely a no-go, and I would be surprised unless someone was, just trying to get a fastest lap for glory at the end of a sprint race or the feature race.
Yeah.
I don't expect the soft tyres to be used at all.
Right. So, while the drivers are sorting their strategies out and getting ready for the formation lap, let's just take a little look at the Drivers' Championship a second. So, Rich 500, sitting at the top of the standings on 86 points. Jess in 2nd on 65 points. Quinn in 3rd on 62. Joe, who is on the front row for this race, is also on 62. J. Luke in 5th place on 58 points. Cowboy on 50. Then we have Papa Squanch on 49. Funky on 47. Leroy on 45. Then we have Salo, Jamie, Proverb, Catherine, Mason, Matthias, Skrillex, Guest, Ghoston has unfortunately left. We got M125, Kenzie, Anthony, and Felix have left, and James Killer in 23rd, yet to score a point, Mike.
Yeah, and Trash Panda on -3 points. You had to get out of the minus for Trash Panda down in 24th. But yeah, I mean, Cole, I mean, as I believe the drivers are getting ready to go on their formation now, so we'll jump back on board in just a moment. But yeah, looking at the standings, Rich, I think has got some serious contenders coming his way. J. Luke, he's missed the first 3 rounds of the championship, and look at the run of form that J. Luke has been on.
Yeah, it's astonishing, isn't it? I mean, and he's had a lot, it hasn't been easy for him, safety cars to deal with, rain to deal with, and J-Luke seems to be taking it in his stride. So Rich can't afford to take it easy. Yes, he's got, what's he got? He's got a 21-point lead, but that can be obliterated very easily. Don't forget, we've got, not quite double points, obviously, but we've got a sprint round now where you could effectively score 29 points. So it's going to be really important. Rich there up in 4th, Mike, putting himself in a good position for some good points here, though.
Yeah, absolutely. As we transfer back over to the on-track action as they're on their formation lap, it's going to be very interesting because obviously you've got Joe, who is 24 points off the back of Rich in terms of the championship. He's starting from the front row. He's got his teammate in Salu, who has been one of the quicker drivers throughout the course of the season, but has also been one of those drivers that just hasn't been able to string together clean races consecutively. Of course, he's got 2 podium finishes so far this season, of course, in round number 4 and last time out. And he's looking to go better than that here tonight. And then, of course, you got J. Luke. He's currently in 7th. But J. Luke, since coming into P2 at round number 4, he took a race win in round number 4. He took a race win in the feature at round number 5. And then he took a P2 last time out in round number 6. So if you're looking at the form, I mean, if you're Rich, you're looking at the drivers we just mentioned, with Joe, Salu, and J. Luke. And seeing Mason up there on the pole position, it might be a little bit nervy for Rich now.
I think it could be, yeah. It's very difficult when you lead a championship by that much. It kind of gets a bit nervy, Mike.
Yeah, it absolutely does, as we wait for the drivers to line up in their grid positions to get themselves underway here in the sprint race. Cole, I will allow you to take us underway here.
And we have the worst camera angle, but Mason starts on pole. The 5 lights are on. Who gets the good start? Mason gets a solid start, but not brilliant, as Joe is in the inside into the first turn. Mason tries to hang around the outside. Salu attempted on Mason. This is reminiscent of the real race between Norris and Russell, and they're still side by side, still a little bit of contact, but Mason into 2nd place. What a start from Joe, Mike.
Yeah, fantastic start from Joe, as Salu's not done with Mason just yet, and Mason will be trying to cut back, maybe look for a better exit, but unable to get Papa Squanch up in the P4. He's managed to get ahead of Richie, and J. Luke directly behind his teammate now can start to put the pressure on Jess with a good start up in the P9 from 12 from the grid. So Jess trying to come through the field as well, and this is going to be very important for Jess, and of course J. Luke to score as many points in the sprint race as possible, because obviously they'll be starting further back in the feature race once the engine and the gearbox penalties are applied to it.
Yes, exactly, yeah. Just to correct everyone, Luke is just kindly reminded me, it's actually 10 points for a victory today in the sprint. So it's 10th, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So the top 10 will score points this evening in the sprint, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. And every single one of those points could really matter. And it could matter massively for the likes of Joe getting a sprint race victory here tonight. And with Rich down in P5, obviously battling his teammate in P5, P6, trying to get on the back of Papa Squanch for P4 as well. It's insanely important for Joe that this kind of order stays as it is, because it's a decent amount of points that Joe will be gaining on Rich, and he'll back himself in the future race to maybe get past the Mercedes driver.
Yeah, exactly that. He has dropped one place, but Mike, an exceptionally clean first couple of laps from the drivers. Very, very impressive. There was only one report from P2 last week as well. So the P2 drivers really showing their very, very good wheel-to-wheel battling skills. And Mike, look how close the field is. Only Matthias and Funky are really out of DRS, really, apart from the back two drivers. So still all to play for.
And yeah, it's only, and it's not really like massively going to hinder everyone that is out of DRS right now, because they're so close they could just use an extra little bit of dab of VRS to get themselves back within it. But Jess making a move on Skrillex, and this is where the gap is probably a bit too big now, where it's like half a second, because you're going to see everyone pull away from Jess. That gap is going to extend, and it actually doesn't, to be fair. So Jess actually able to mitigate the damage, and I think that might be because Jess might have picked up DRS off of Skrillex before overtaking the Aston Martin, as Skrillex tries to get the move down on Power. But up at the front, Joe and Salu trading positions here at the race lead, swapping between the Alpines. Oh, it's like a Mason.
And Papa Squanch now up into the podium spots as well. So we've got two changes in the first four in two corners. So Papa Squanch looking very, very racy. Salo still hunting that first one hub racing victory. He's had poles, he's had podiums, yet to get a victory, Mike.
Yeah, and this will be huge for Salu's season, because of course, as we mentioned, he's one of the quicker drivers in the tier, and his qualifying pace and race pace does show that. But he's always been one of the drivers that has had an instant that drops him down towards the back of the field, which is where he definitely does not, he definitely shouldn't be there in terms of pace, but is where he is due to circumstance of the instance he gets caught up in. Sometimes it can be a minor mistake by himself, sometimes just a little bit of wheel-to-wheel contact, and he comes off much worse than the other driver on it. But Joe gonna relegate him back down into P2. Papa Squanch goes in as well, as Papa Squanch gonna send one down the inside on Salu, and he is gonna get the job done as Papa Squanch. Oh, what Mason!
Oh,
breaking himself, I think, sending one on the inside of both Papa Squanch and Salu, and that is heavy front wing damage for the McLaren, I saw.
Yes, I don't think he actually went for a move there. I think that was just, he outbraked himself and thought, I've got to go down the inside. I'm going to slam into the back of the driver. But is this going to replicate now, Mike, what happened in the real race where Charles Leclerc damaged the end plate and it didn't really affect him too much? That could be the same here, but he's already, Mike, dropping at least 4/10 behind Salo. Salo now entered the last lap in first and is now down in third.
The Mercedes have collided with each other. Mercedes dragging each other off track as Rich and J-Luke come into contact. The Mercedes, the teamwork, it's like Hamilton Rosberg as they both go off track, drop positions. What I was going to say though, Cole, both the Mercedes being stuck behind Mason in this middle sector, not going to help them, because you can see Mason losing time in this middle sector especially. He's just about able to hold on to DRS, and now this is where Mason, I think, has to play the team game, because he's got a wounded McLaren, he's got his teammate directly in behind him.
Yeah,
I think Mason may not be using any ERS. He'll just use the DRS, allow Jamie to use a bit of ERS to close up, and then just allow Jamie to go through and maybe try to hold up Jess and the trailing Mercedes drivers, as J-Luke and Rich again battling out. J-Luke goes deep.
Look at that!
And look at this, now the Mercedes are battling once again, and these are possible championship rivals. More contact between the two teammates.
There is no love lost there. This is huge for the championship. This is massive. J-Luke, he is desperate to overtake Rich. There is certainly not a of team orders at Mercedes between these two drivers. That's a fact. But Mike, look at the gap. All it's doing is hurting them. They've completely been dropped now. They're 3.2 seconds behind Jess. Really struggling at this stage of the race now because of all the fighting they're doing.
Yeah, and here's the thing. So they should have the ability to close up in the middle sector. Just because the leader of the train in front is Mason, and Mason has a damaged car. They should be able to close up in this middle sector, and you're seeing it there. 2.7 is closed up, so around about 3 tenths gain for J. Luke and Richie. But they're not going to be gaining in terms of the straights, because J. Luke is not going to have the straight line speed that the likes of Jess and Jamie will have. And these three can work together in terms of DRS and try to tow each other and keep each other away from J. Luke. But J. Luke's going to have his own issues, because we're going to see Rich get past him with DRS as Mason and Jamie have done the old switcheroo there. The McLaren team orders coming into play, and McLaren now need Mason to get the elbows out and make things life very difficult for the Red Bull in behind.
Yeah, he wants to make that car as wide as a tank to stop Jess and try and help Jamie get clear. Can Jamie, how much life has he got in these tyres, Mike? How much pace has he got? Can he catch the top three and challenge them? J. Luke now, like you said, Mike, behind Rich, but still in that DRS zone, but Rich is slowly catching Jess.
Yeah, and that is obviously down to the fact that there is wing damage in play in the cars up ahead. If Jess can get through on Mason on this lap, I think we may see Mason fall away from Jess and Jamie and fall back into the clutches of Rich and J. Luke. Looks like the Mercedes have managed to gap Skrillex just a little bit, but Skrillex is just floating around potential that he could snag DRS again. But the top three are in the DRS train, and I think this is going to be the top three for the remainder of the race.
I think you're right, Mike. Mason's got DRS on Jamie, so I don't think he'll challenge Jamie, but keep him having a bit more straight speed to defend from Jess behind. But I don't think it's going to be long before Rich is going to get involved. Unfortunately, we've had one of the Ferraris, Leroy, have a spin, and what a nightmare race to the Ferraris. Don't forget, Quinn is sitting, I think he's sitting in third place in the championship, and he's down in 14th. And he has wing damage.
Well, I mean, much like in real life, Ferrari is having a nightmare here in China. That is for sure. But the Alpines are flying high right now. Both cars on the podium positions, Cole. And just having a little look at the constructors. I mean, this does wonders for them in terms of the constructors, because they'll jump Ferrari to P2 in the constructor standings and close up quite considerably on Mercedes.
Yeah, it certainly will.
Oh,
Salo! Oh, he's had a huge... Now that's going to really help Jamie, because now he is only half a second behind him with DRS coming into play. So a small mistake, a relatively small mistake from Salo is going to have huge consequences. Can Jamie stick with him? Look at Salo. He is 1.5 seconds behind Papa Squanch, which means he is not going to have DRS, but Jamie will. And
I don't think J.R. Mason's going to have DRS either. He was outside of 1 second at the activation point, I believe, the protection point. So we're going to see now, Jess might be able to get the job done on J.R. Mason, as Jamie might be able to get the job done on Salo for the final podium position. Here comes the McLaren. The McLaren is going to get through down the inside, trying to outbrake the Alpine, who's going to try and hold it around the outside, but the grip and the traction is there for Jamie. Job done. I think Mason might have just snagged DRS by the smallest of margins, and that has saved him from being overtaken by Jess. But he doesn't have it now.
He doesn't have it now. I was surprised. Jess on the inside. Has Jess done it? Yes, she has. Yet again, these two are together, racing wheel to wheel. But quite good defence there from Mason, considering his front wing damage. He's in 6th place. There's just a couple of laps to go. Is he going to be able to hang on to 5th place, or is Rich going to be able to catch him? But Salo, somewhere, has re-overtaken. Salo is back up to 3rd, Mike.
Yeah, back up to 3rd, but now what Jamie and Salo need to do is potentially try to work together here, DRS switch down the next two straights at least to get themselves back on the back of Papa Squanch here, because that's the goal for the pair of them, and that's to see if they can get P2. They won the podium, but they would absolutely love P2 in this race, and know they're going to be fighting for it.
Oh, they're definitely going to be going. It's so important for them, but he's not close enough yet, Mike. He's not that. Oh, hang on.
Jamie's had a moment. He's gone to the inside, curving through the snail corner, and that has hindered his run onto the 1 kilometre straight, and that has allowed Jess to close up somewhat as well. So now, Cole, we're going to have a three-way battle for the final podium position.
It certainly is going to be so tight now. Salo in a bit of bother here. He is slowly but surely bringing in Papa Squatch. Oh, as Jamie has a huge... Just about keeps it.
I think Jamie's tyres are beginning to go now, Cole. I think they are starting to fall away from him. And maybe his setup might not be stable once the tyres begin to slip. We'll have to wait and see what happens in the feature race with regards to that. But Salo, Jamie, Jess, who is going to be taking that final podium position? And let's not forget that Papa Squanch, one mistake and he's dragged into that battle. Joe, one mistake from him, he's dragged into a battle with Papa Squanch. So everything is on the line by here, and JR Mason, with that wind damage, now has two rampaging Mercedes in behind him. And the silver arrows of Rich 500 and J Luke are now onto the back of that papaya orange McLaren on the penultimate lap here.
Yeah, it's going to be so tight now, this last. We got a yellow flag in Sector 2. I think that's Proverb making a mistake. He's now down into 14th place. Guest in the pit lane, chucking on a set of softs. But Jamie, he's there, Mike. He's where he needs to be.
Yeah, and Jess not too far behind as well. Let's see what will happen as they run down towards the hard break in the turn 14 with DRS wide open. I don't think Jamie's going to want to go for this. He wants DRS on the final lap, but Salo also wants DRS on the final lap. They're going to slow each other up. This might open the door for Jess, and Jess, with great traction out of turn 14, will get the move possibly around the outside of Salo. No overtake there for Jess, but that might just give Jamie a little bit of breathing room to survive down the start of the straight. But this is where it's all going to come down to the final 1 kilometre straight. And in terms of the battery right now, Cole, Jamie is the one who is suffering the least with the terms of the battery. He has the lowest out of all the drivers here, but he also has the disadvantage of not having DRS.
Yes, that's the key thing here. As Salo really loses it under braking. Rich has actually gone past Mason, so it's a Mercedes sandwich. With Mason in the middle. Can he hold on to 7th place as Leroy sets the fastest lap on those fresh softs? But look how close Salo is, Mike. He is right on the rear wing of Jamie.
Yeah, he absolutely is, and it looks like Salo is going to try to line up a potential overtake down in towards turn 14. They need to be careful though, because Jess is just in the background ready and waiting to pounce on any mistake from these guys up ahead. And now, Cole, foot to the floor, think about your braking point, activate DRS, use the ERS, and let's see who's going to come out on top here, because here comes Salo, flies past Jamie, and will be well ahead before the break-in, and Jess has a little peek down the inside, but doesn't want to commit to it. As it looks like, Salo's had a movement on traction on the exit.
He's gone wide!
Jamie side by side with Salo as we go into the final corner. Jess, unfortunately, not going to be able to make the overtake work on any of them, and it's going to be Joe taking victory ahead of Papa Squanch. Salo completes the podium. Jamie in 4th, Jess in 5th, Rich in 6th, J Luke in 7th. Mason with a great drive considering the wind damage in 8th, Funky in 9th, and Skrillex rounding out the top 10, taking that final point paying position. Then of course M125 in 11th, Quinn in 12th, Proverb in 13th, Matthias today in 14th, Leroy will come through in 15th, and then Geist will of course come through in 16th place. Cole, I mean,
wow.
Joe, once he broke DRS, there was no stopping him. Papa Squanch was in a battle with Salo until Salo made the mistake that dragged him into a battle with Jamie and Jess at the end.
Absolutely superb driving, top to bottom. what massive congratulations to Joe. It's his first victory in One Hub. So that is his first victory. It is a sprint victory. I know the drivers don't consider sprint victories as prestigious as feature race victories, but he is a race winner nonetheless, Mike. A superb drive, played it to perfection, passed Mason right at the start, had an absolutely bonkers start. Really, really great off the line and perfect into turn one. But what battling we had throughout the field. So don't forget, it's going to be reverse grid, Mike. So by my calculation, Grillix will start from pole.
Yep, absolutely. But that's when you put the order one more time. It is Joe who takes the sprint victory ahead of Papa Squanch in second place, Salu there in third, Jamie in fourth with Jess in fifth, Rich 500 in sixth with J Luke in seventh, JL Mason in eighth with Funky in ninth, and Skrillex rounding up the top 10 and getting that all important pole position for the feature race. Outside the top 10 was M125 Quinn, Proverb, Mattis, Leroy, and then of course Geese going to be rounding out the final point there in last place. But Cole, we did mention that we would have a little look at the standings. Once the sprint race was done. This is how the constructors are lining up. So with that sprint race result, we see Alpine jump Ferrari now into P2 in the championship, and a decent amount of points gained on the Mercedes pairing up in front. Now, we know Joe and I believe, we know J. Luke is taking an engine penalty. I believe, let's have a look here. And Joe also taking engine penalties along with Jess. This is where it's going to get very, very interesting because both, J. Luke is going to be starting down towards the back, but I believe Joe will be in last place due to the fact that with the reverse of the sprint qualifying results in the top 10, Joe will be starting from the back and he'll have to overtake J. Luke and Jess early on to try and get himself up the order.
Yeah, it's going to be very difficult now. Overtaking doesn't look... It's not as easy as I thought, Mike. I got to be honest. It's the DRS isn't too powerful. I think it's doing what it should do in this race, which is get you into position to have a go down the inside. So it's still incredibly important to get that the long right-hander before the main straight absolutely bang on to get a good run on the car ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I believe the McLaren pairing of Jamie and Mason would have jumped the RBs, the Visa Cash App Racing Bulls F1 team, into 5th place in the constructors. So they'll be happy with that. That is for sure. But in terms of the drivers, we'll run you through the order in terms of the drivers again. Rich coming in tonight leads away on 86 points, 21 points clear of Jess in second place with Quinn in third. Not anymore. Joe has taken that position. I believe he might have also jumped Jess as well, so Joe could be right now second in the championship. J. Luke there in P5, Cowboy in 6th with Papa Squanch in 7th, Funky in 8th, Leroy in 9th, and Salu there completing the top 10. I believe Salu would have jumped ahead of Leroy, and I don't think... maybe he might have scored enough to jump ahead of Funky, possibly. We'll have to wait and see. But Salu, though, he will be a little bit further into the top 10, so you'll be happy with that. Jamie, with a big result, would have closed up the gap to the top 10 as well. I believe he'll still be 11th, but he'll be a lot closer to Leroy going into this second race now, Cole. Proverb in 12th, Catherine 13th, Mason in 14th, Matase in 15th, Skrillex in 16th, Geeks in 17th, Ghost unfortunately no longer with us in 18th, M125 looking to get points on the board in 19th. Then of course Kenzie, Anthony and Felix also unfortunately dropping out this season. And of course we got James Z Killer and Trash Panda there in 23rd and 24th place respectfully. And Cole, because we wasn't able to do it before the one-shot qualifying action got underway, we will go through our sponsors and partners here in One Hub Racing. Of course, to our sponsors with Next Level Racing. and of course Pure Sim Gear, providing some fantastic prizes for the drivers. Of course, our sponsor with Vespertine as well. And of course, Sim Grid, where we just saw the standings, of course. And last but not least, the Mental Health Foundation. Guys, if you do need to talk to someone, make sure you do, because it is never good to suffer in silence.
Yes, very well said, Mike. So that's just our fantastic partners. I mean, the prizes on offer are astounding. And they will, these drivers, they're going to want to be in the hunt for these prizes. But Mike, it's far too early to tell who is actually going to be in this top three. Rich is sitting in a nice position. But, you know, Jess beat Rich in that race. Quinn was in third. He's going to drop quite considerably after a poor sprint race from himself. So it's all to play for, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the way he is looking at the moment, Joe would have jumped up into potentially second in the race. Second in the championship. Jess would have closed the gap as well on Rich. J-Luke wouldn't have closed the gap on Rich, but he might have potentially jumped ahead of Quinn in the championship. So Quinn, coming in tonight, would have started third in the championship. He might be down to fifth at this point.
Yes, I think Quinn will be looking for a bit of redemption in the feature race. But, Mike, we've said earlier that the drivers aren't going to have to contend with any wet weather. But don't forget, it is a two-stop race. So it's a lot of strategy thinking to be going. We have to work on the fly. If you are getting stuck behind drivers, Mike, it might be worth pitting and trying to get an undercut.
Well, I mean, that's the idea. The undercut very powerful around this circuit, so maybe the undercut will be seen as the option for all the drivers out there to try and get the jump on a few people. The tyre strategy call is going to be very interesting to say the least, as we see obviously 28 laps, 16 corners, 7 to the left, 9 to the right, 2 DRS zones, 5.4 kilometers, 3.3 miles. What we are going to see in terms of the tyre strategy call, I don't think we're going to see any soft tyres used at all. Not unless someone's trying to go for fastest lap at the end of the race, or there's a very late safety car. I think we're potentially going to see someone maybe going medium, hards, medium. I don't think anyone should be risking their race early on by starting on the hard tyres, because they do take a decent while to warm up and get into the rhythm.
Yes, obviously some of the drivers near the back might think, you know what, I'm starting at the back, maybe I will start on the hards. So I think we're going to see a mixture of strategies tonight. I wonder if any of the drivers are going to have changed their plans, considering where they're going to be starting for this feature race. Don't forget, it is reverse grid for the top 10, and we do have a number of drivers taking grid penalties, Mike.
Yep, and 3 very quick drivers taking the grid penalties call as well. So for the likes of Jess, for the likes of Joe, as well as J-Luke, is all going to be about trying to navigate your way through the traffic to get yourselves up the order as much as possible on that first stint. Maybe try to use an undercut to your advantage to maybe get a jump on a couple more of the drivers in the second stint, and then we'll see where everyone is placed by the end of the second stint before they come in for their final pit stops, and we'll see where they're at. But I mean, Cole, trying to battle your way through back markers can bring its own dilemmas, because naturally you're going to have a lot more confidence going through corners. You're going to be carrying more speed. You're going to be more confident on the brakes as well. And it is very easy in those situations to chip off a little bit of your front wing, get some early damage, and just hemorrhage time throughout the entirety of that stint.
Yeah, it's really important for the drivers not to lose patience. Some drivers are going to be behind, like you said, Mike, going to be behind drivers that they're much quicker than. but it's going to be all about timing your moves, making sure that you do it in the safest manner possible. It is motorsport, so all overtakes are have an element of risk, but especially the likes of Jay Luke, who is taking a 15-place grid penalty, he's got to be a little bit careful, especially the first couple of laps, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. Same with Joe and Jess, because obviously
Yeah.
those three are all taking penalties. They will all three be starting at the very back. I believe it'll be Joe starting at the very back with Jess alongside him, then Jay Luke just in front. And that is going to be very interesting because, remember, Quinn, who didn't score no points, is going to be starting quite low down the order as well for his standards. So, Quinn also being in that fight. We got the four drivers that are all trying to chase Rich down in the championship. Going to be starting quite low down compared to Rich. How much they're going to fight each other rather than just try to close the gap on Rich, because I think Elbow is going to be out between those four 100%.
Yeah, definitely. They don't, and like you said, Mike, they don't want to be fighting each other. They're going to have to use a bit of, like we saw with J. Luke and Salo in the first stint last weekend, where they were trading DRS for lap after lap in the first stint to pull away. They almost need to do something similar where they don't want to be fighting each other too much. But, are they going to think, right, here's my chance to overtake my rival and go for it? So it could be that those three actually end up holding each other up for the vast majority of the first stint. But we'll have to wait and see, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. We will have to wait and see. Because we already saw in the sprint race, Cole, there's no team orders going on at Mercedes. And that is something that I think is going to get very spicy as that unfolds. Speaking of spicy though, Cole, let's have a little look and see who got called in to the drivers' press conference this week, and it was Papa Squanch who got called in. The question we put to him: your race in Australia was amazing. Looking at the rest of the calendar, which tracks do you think you would do well at, and do you think you can keep up the form you showed in Australia? Papa Squanch responded saying, I don't think for 1 second that it'll be like Australia. There's plenty of fast people here who I'm looking forward to battle. Usually I do better on tracks I don't like anyway. So, potentially, I mean, he's left it a little bit open in terms of, potentially not wanting to show his hand a little bit too early, Cole. Like, he's saying he does well at tracks that he doesn't like. He hasn't said whether or not he likes China, but he's just dangling a little hook at the moment, isn't he, Papa Squanch?
He is a bit, isn't he? But going on the sprint race, he seems to be on form. His pace seems to be good. So I think he's going to definitely be within the shout of a feature race victory, like he did last week.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, in terms of the rivalries, we called Catherine and Mathis into the rivalries for this week. Catherine, we put the question to the pair of them. We'll go with Catherine's response first. But the question we put to the pair of them was, you seemed very similar pace last week, and there was one minor mistake which resulted in a racing incident. What gives you the edge over your competitor? Catherine responds saying, we both had good pace for sure, and I enjoyed the racing. I think I get less warnings / track limit penalties, which help. And then Matt is saying, we are both even, but I may have the advantage on some circuits, but it is even between us. So, Catherine saying the advantage is keeping it on track, and Mattis is saying his advantage comes track to track. It depends on the circuit they're racing at. So, interesting that they're both showing a bit of respect, and then they're both, trying to, feel each other out in terms of, the rivalry and everything. But I think the juicy rivalry now going to be moving forward, Cole, is the Mercedes rivalry.
Yeah, you're not kidding. Yeah, I haven't actually had an opportunity to have a look at the P2 tier chat yet. I don't know what the Whether there's been any slagging matches between the two Mercs or not, I don't know. But it's not ideal for the pair of them. They would have both not been happy with that incident, regardless of if anyone's at fault or even if it was just a racing incident. But they can't afford to keep doing that. You know, it's gonna really derail Rich's championship. But J. Luke is in the position where, you know, he started late into the tier. He's just got to go for it.
Yeah,
you know, he's just got to go hell to it and just go for it. So Rich has got to be a little bit wise to that. He's going to know that J. Luke is very, very desperate. J. Luke knows that Rich is leading the championship and is not going to want to be involved in accidents as well. So it's a very interesting dynamic between those two at the minute.
Yeah, and of course, if you're looking at the form in recent weeks, it's J. Luke that appears to be the better, as the better of the pair in the Mercedes right now. Obviously, the sprint result had Rich narrowly beating J. Luke, of course, on track, which is going to spice it up, what's called for the feature race. But with that engine and gearbox penalty for J. Luke, it's going to drop him a little bit further back from Rich. It might give Rich a little bit of breathing space, but what Rich does not want is J. Luke, Jess, Joe, and Quinn to get onto the back of him in that first stint. If those guys can get themselves right onto the back of Rich at the end of that first stint, we are in for a very spicy second and final stint of the race.
Oh, most definitely. Safety cars around here, Mike, are quite rare due to the nature of the track. So there's lots of runoff. You haven't got many walls which you end up in and DNF. But I don't think we should rule it out. We've seen them in most races, but I don't think we're going to see many around here, which basically means, Mike, that you cannot afford to make a mistake. You know, you get a spin, you're not going to get a safety car to get you back in the hunt. So it's going to be very, very important for these drivers not to make any big mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. And looking at the pre-race interviews call as well, we put the questions out to all the drivers. Welcome to the final sprint weekend of the season. How are you feeling about it? Joe saying not too bad. Hopefully you can get points in both sprint and main race. And obviously judging by his pace in the sprint race, he's definitely on course to doing that. J. Luke saying, I'm feeling fairly confident coming into this weekend. And battling his teammate, I wonder if that is going to be remaining, or is there going to be fireworks are flying at Mercedes? Time will tell. Salu saying, I have strongly mixed feelings in honesty. Been struggling a little, but gaining a little confidence over time. Not expecting miracles, but will push as much as I can. And then, of course, we had Minus saying that he's not feeling too good enough for tonight's race. He said bad, unfortunately. Not confident here, but Papa Squan saying excited to see what lies ahead. Matt saying, I feel that this is both a good and bad, that you can get some points, but then if you don't get any points, you have no chance of getting any more sprint points, but only regular ones. Funky saying he's feeling pretty good here tonight. Jess saying not too confident really. Is about damage limitation for Jess. So interesting spread in terms of what the drivers are all thinking, Cole.
It is, isn't it? Some people are confident, some think that they've got no hope and just want to limit the damage, really. So it's going to be a very interesting race. What can J. Luke, Joe, and Jess do from the back of the grid? Can they make it up into the front? It's going to be very, very interesting, Mike.
Yes, it is. I think the first 2 laps for these guys are going to be the most crucial because everyone's going to be bunched up. Turn 1 can always be a little bit hectic. People trying to get some moves done early doors. It's going to be one of those where those three, especially those three at the back, they're going to have to keep a wide berth to the cars in front of them and make sure that they are in the right positions to pick any incidents off, to make sure they can get their way through the field calm, efficient, and as clean as possible. Because around them, I don't know, you could see a couple of drivers potentially looking for a lunge into turn 1 down the inside, and we may end up with a One Hub Racing version of Danny Kvyat, of course, who remembers that years ago, the torpedo through turn number 1 back in the day. Of course, very likely can happen if you get a very good launch out of the first corner, because around turn 1 and 2, there are gaps that open, and you do see that there are people that will go for those gaps, and that could also cause a torpedo-like moment.
Yeah, definitely. And the drivers are got to be wary of that. You know, it's the type of track where you saw Mason do it in the sprint. Easily outbraked himself, had to take sort of avoided action where he had to go for the move when he didn't really want to do it. So the drivers have got to be a bit aware of that. I did ask in the chat, who is your punt for the feature win? Jason has said Salo for the win. And Salo is actually using Jason's setup. So, Jace, does that mean that if he has a bad race, we can blame you? Or... But Salo is Jason's punt for the race win. Now, don't forget, his main rivals really, not all of them, but some of his main rivals will be starting near the back. So, Salo is in a good position.
He is in a very good position. It's Salo, and what I heard is that if Salo does not have a good race here tonight, then it is 100% going to be on Jason.
Unlucky, Jace. No pressure, mate.
As Jason person, nah, blame his driving and skill in chat. No, the setup's everything.
So there's equal pressure now on both Salo and Jason. I'm really hoping that Salo has a good race. I genuinely think that if things go his way now tonight, he could get the monkey off his back and get that first race win. It feels as though it's only around the corner, Mike. But like you said, he's got to cut out the little errors. He did make 1 or 2 errors in that race, which put him under pressure. If he can remove those mistakes, he's got a really good chance.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what all Salo needs to do, is just try to keep it together, not have those small, minute mistakes that we have seen from him over the course of the season thus far. But Carl, looking at the strategy here, I mean, Geist is starting on a set of the soft combo tires. Jess is opting for the hards. Now, I did obviously a practice lobby earlier, and I'm not gonna lie, Carl, the hards felt awful the first couple of laps. They felt decent once I warmed them up, but in the first couple of laps, trying to get those hard tires to warm up, you're just losing so much time to the mediums and soft runners. It's just one of those situations where you're going to end up losing DRS naturally, and once you lose it, it's very difficult to get it back.
Yeah, and it's so important to stay in that DRS. Has Jess made a strategy blunder, or has she done a masterstroke for starting on these hards? Don't forget, there is going to be a lot of battling in the first couple of laps, and that might be able to help Jess stay within that 1 second on those harder compounder tyres. The race will come back to her in the second half of the race, but let's see how she gets on. Start. She's not going to get the best getaway on those hard, Mike, and she could be in a bit of bother from Guest and Joe behind.
Absolutely, and look at the situation Rich has got himself in. He's going to be starting from P4, Cole. He's in a McLaren sandwich, and then right behind him off the start, you got Salo, and you saw the kind of starts that Salo can get over the course of the season. He gets lightning starts. You got Papa Squanch in P7 as well. Those two very quick drivers, so close to Rich, could be enough to cause a nuisance, which would allow the likes of J. Luke, Joe, as well as Jess maybe on those hards, to try and carve their way through the field. But when you've got some soft runners here, expect those soft runners to be quick on the first couple of laps and then completely fall off a cliff.
Yeah, obviously we got Matthias, Leroy and Guest choosing to start on the soft tyres. Didn't expect to see that, as Skrillex gets disqualified on the formation lap. So that is a big disadvantage, Mike, because he is going to start a good meter behind his best place for the grid box. Funky with a great opportunity.
And we're about to go to those 5 red lights to get underway here in China. The 5 red lights are out and we are underway, and it's a good start there from Funky, but he gets some wheel spin in third gear. That might open the door for Mason, but here goes Rich trying it down the inside. 2x2x2 like Noah's Ark. There's a Haas going off, and I think he's going off into Malaysia potentially with the runoff right there as Rich and Jamie battling out side by side. Jamie trying to get good traction on the exit. Salu up in the P6. Quinn into P7. J-Luke all the way up into P8 already. J-Luke charging for the field early on. Papa Squanster had a nightmare. And I believe it was Papa Squanster went off at turn number 1. And he's been overtaken by Jess early on. Joe in 14th place. But look at J-Luke massively getting a jump on multiple drivers at the start. And he's up in the P9 call.
What a start from J-Luke. That's exactly what he wanted.
Quinn.
Oh!
Quinn and Jamie there side by side through the double left-hander, and contact made, and Quinn comes off worse, but now Quinn rejoins in P10 just ahead of Mattis as his teammate Leroy's gone for a spin. Leroy around and falls to the back of the grid. Leroy, heartbreak for him, but that is the risk of wearing the red rolled soft tyres. They overheat, and Jamie has wing damage, Cole.
Yes, well spotted, Mike. Yeah, Jamie does have wing damage, but despite that wing damage, he did actually overtake Salo. So we saw in the sprint race that, as they all go very wide on the last, we saw in the sprint race that wing damage does affect you. Not considerably, but it will make you slower. So is Jamie going to change his strategy now and box a little earlier than planned, as J-Luke is now up to 7th place?
Yeah, getting the move done on Salu there. J-Luke up into P7, Jess up into P11, Joe's up into P13 coming from the back of the field. And this is where, Cole, is going to get very, very tasty, because we're seeing the top floor. They've broken away from Jamie. They're outside that 1 second. And this is where you're going to see Jamie fall further and further behind. J-Luke needs to hope that Jamie has enough battery to try and get himself maybe some McLaren teamwork. Maybe Mason can back off a little bit for Jamie to get DRS. But J-Luke needs Jamie to hold on to DRS. But right now, he's outside of the 1 second window.
Yeah, it's not what Jamie wants. It really isn't. He's got a crowd of cars behind him, desperate to overtake. But one thing I will say with Jamie, he gets that last corner, the long right-hander, absolutely brilliantly. Because look, even though M125's got DRS, he is not in a position to go down the inside. As Rich is up into 2nd place, Mike, he splits the Aston Martins.
Yeah, absolutely. Skrillex tried to outbrake Rich into the hairpin, but runs too deep into that corner, and he falls victim to Rich there, and that is not ideal for him, as Rich is going to be overtaken by Skrillex. Skrillex going to try to hold it all the way around the outside of turn 1 and 2, and he has the inside line for turn number 3. Job done there for Rich, and this gap right now is allowing Funky to go clear. And that's exactly what Funky needs. J-Luke has he's been overtaken by Salu. M125 has picked up a 3-second time penalty, but he's dropped the second off the back of Jamie now. What has gone on there for the Sauber? We can only make assumptions on what we think has happened. Maybe potentially just too much of a runoff and losing too much time on it, but a 3-second time penalty nonetheless for M125. Not been a good start of this P2 campaign since dropping down from P1, Cole.
Yeah, that's it. He's not had the best of times, poor old M125. He's put himself in a good position, but he hasn't got much pace around here, Mike, and that 3 seconds is also going to hurt him. But going back to that Skrillex move on Rich, absolute stunner. That is absolutely perfect. It's one of, to be honest, it's probably the best overtaking manoeuvre I have seen all season. And credit to both drivers there. You need both drivers to be compliant for that type of manoeuvre to come off. But Mike, look at Jamie's pace with that front wing. It's damaged. He's passed his teammate and he's catching everyone. This is brilliant from Jamie.
Yeah, absolutely. Jamie trying to make sure that he stays in this conversation because he will come in and he will change our front wing. So he's going to lose a bit of time with the front wing change, but he's making sure that he's in the conversation. He's going to be in and around it. That's what he's hoping for. And with that front wing, it's going to be it's going to be suffering a little bit now. But if he can stay close to the likes of Rich and Skrillex and Mason here, then he can try. Oh, Skrillex collecting the inside curve and going off into a bit of a half spin, and that's allowed Mason to go through. We got M125 trying to hold it around the outside out the double left-hander, and he's at the run deep. Salo's through, up into P6 goes the Alpine. This side-by-side coming down in towards turn number 11 now, as we go through 12 in towards number 13, and looks like M125 trying to hold it. More contact made between them. J-Luke has literally got his heart in his mouth right now, as he was looking at that directly in front of him. And here we go, DRS activated. Salu is going to lose
3 abreast, Mike.
Oh my god, Quinn out of nowhere, and there's going to be 3 wide into the braking zone. Contact between Salu and Quinn, as J. Luke is going to try to get the job done on Quinn here. Side by side on the exit into the final corner, and it's going to be J. Luke in P7. Salu though goes from P6 down to P9 as he tries to recover a position here by getting himself past Quinn.
What stunning driving. 3 abreast into that corner, and they all managed to come out the other side. Not even so much as a little bit of contact. Absolutely brilliant. But such a shame for Skrillex. Just as I complimented him on his fantastic overtake, he makes a small mistake with big consequences. And the 2 McLarens jumped him, and he is now under pressure from the P2 returning driver, M125, in the kick Sauber. He does have that 3-second time penalty, Mike. Looking at this track, it seems to be that last corner which everyone's having problems with. They all seem to be running wide, and that's probably where they're picking up their corner cutting warnings, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. That is one of the corners which we alluded to earlier, where you gotta be so careful in terms of the track limits, because it's one of those corners where there is a correct way of taking that corner, where you're going to be carrying the most speed as well as making sure that you're not exceeding the track limits, but you got to be accurate with it. And here is someone that is going to try to be accurate with it, and that's J. Luke down the inside of M125. A little bit of a nudge between the pair, but the Mercedes driver up into P6, and he's going to try now to go through and collect himself up the order. But there you just see them both drift out wide off track, and here comes M125 coming back at J. Luke here down in towards turn number 1. M125 back through, and Salu tries to hold it all the way around the outside of J. Luke, but J. Luke's back on the inside of M125. That's going to box Salu in somewhat, as J. Luke's going to try to hold it around the outside. A gap's open here for Salu. If he can get the traction down, he can get alongside the Mercedes, but he doesn't. Call it. It's going to be 3 wide down into towards turn number 6, as looks like Skrillex has a horrible exit, and that has allowed M125 and J. Luke through up into P5 and P6 respectively. Skrillex a little bit wide there, so unfortunately he's not to concede the position, but fortunately Salu was not close enough to him to capitalise on that.
What exceptional racing! If there's anyone watching who hasn't done league racing before and want to know why you want to join One Hub, just watch these manoeuvres. Absolutely brilliant. I mean, to be honest, all we got... Skrillex. Just as I jinxed Skrillex for the 2nd time in the race, Skrillex, all I can do is apologise. What a shame. He was driving so well. Maybe he got a bit frustrated after his mistake. We got another car round. Matthias has spun. And Mason gets a 10-second time penalty for corner cutting. So I don't know what happened there. I don't know whether he outbraked himself, but... somehow the game gave him a 10-second, and unfortunately he won't be able to get that removed because he'll serve that in the pit lane.
Yeah, absolutely heartbreaking for the McLaren of J.R. Mason. J. Luke now up into P4 in this race, and he is around about 2.5 seconds, Cole, off the back of his teammate. Now, we saw the Mercedes teammates do battle earlier. It got a little bit heated between the pair of them, and it looks like in the feature race at the end of the first stint, they're gonna bunch up together again, Cole.
Yeah. Oh, as M125 outbrakes himself, hits the back of Mason, just about keeps it under control and ahead of Salo, but Salo in back through the fast S's. Salo trying to go around the outside to get the inside for the next corner. What a lovely move from Salo that is, but M125 still hangs it around and just stays ahead. These are very aggressive driving from all of them, really, Mike, and they're not wanting to give up any places easily at all.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's another thing. There's a point for M125, of course, dropping down from P2, from P1 down to P2. Now, he got placed in the top tier. He has the pace. We know that about M125. There's a point to prove for him now. Obviously, dropping down into P2. He needs to kind of showcase why he was originally placed in the top tier, and he's going to dive it into the pits. Same with J. Luke, and this is going to be interesting now, Cole, because the undercut is very good around here at China, and this could be exactly what J. Luke needs to get himself up into that fight with Rich.
Yes, I just went on board Jamie as well. He's elected not to change his front wing, so he's happy with the car. He doesn't feel he needs a front wing. He doesn't think that he can gain those 7 seconds that you'd lose. And J. Luke and Jamie and M125 and Salo all selecting the harder tyres. So let's see what undercut they can get, Mike, when the top guys pit surely in the next couple of laps.
Yep, absolutely. In terms of what I would think these guys on the hard's going to do now, they're going to drag these hard compound tyres for, I'm going to say, around 12 laps to around lap 20, I'm going to say, and then box or set in the mediums at the end, maybe lap 19 potentially. But this is going to be very interesting now, because Jamie and J. Luke, obviously we saw Jamie was battling with Rich before coming into the pits. J. Luke's only 1.2 off the back. So we've got Papa Squanch and Probber fighting side by side, coming into the hairpin. Papa Squanch here a little bit off track. That's allowed Jess to get through. Jess side by side now with Probber coming into the final corner. Jess going to back out of it, as I believe Probber dives it into the pit lane. And he takes the Lewis Hamilton line into the pits, I should add. But unfortunately for him, no gravel there anymore.
Yeah, that was really... I thought he was going to lose it then, Mike. But I actually just went briefly looking at Mason's footage. Mason went into the hairpin, completely outbraked himself, had to cut across the track, missing Funky by what seemed to be a fag paper width, and that's what got him his 10 seconds. So he nearly clattered out not only his teammate but Funky, luckily having the brain power to realise that he had to cut the corner. So that's what got him his 10-second penalty, Mike, and that's him down in 13th now.
And Cole, J. Luke has managed to jump Rich in the pit lane phase, in the pit stop phases.
Wow.
And Rich is opted for another set of the medium compound tyres. So they're on different strategies now. Rich will have the pace in this stint, and then it'll come back to J. Luke for the end of the race. This is going to be very, very interesting. We saw them get tangled with each other earlier, and the potentially could happen again as M125 is out the race. Safety car here.
Safety car.
Absolutely fantastic if your name is Jessica Bull right now, because you are going to be into the pits, set of mediums, and you're going to take them around lap 18, lap 19, and then you're chucking on another set of the mediums. This has worked out perfectly for Jess in this race.
Hasn't it just? I don't know what happened to M125 there. I'm trying to work out what part of the track he lost it, but quite unusual to DNF on this track. I don't know where he lost it. Salo gets a drive-through penalty. Oh, and he was sitting in such a good position. Now, will Will Jess get out in the lead?
I don't
think so, Mike, but she's definitely going to gain a lot of time.
Yeah, she's gonna jump up into around P4, P5, I think, into this race, as Jess will come out just behind Quinn. So what we have now, Cole, Rich is into the pits. He is chucking on a set of the hards. He's going to go to the end of the race now, which he can do, and he's going to try it now. But Rich has sacrificed a lot in terms of track position for this strategy now. And Lukey's saying he lost it on the exit at turn 10. Yes, the double left-handers. He's lost it on the exit of this. But what I heard as well is, I believe it was Jason's setup that caused Salute to get the drive-through penalty, so blame Jason.
I heard that as well, Mike. Yeah, sorry, Jason, it's your fault again. What have you done? Poor old Salo. I mean, if the guy didn't have bad luck, he wouldn't have any at all. I'm just trying to see how he can get himself into a good result from here. It's going to be so difficult. But, Mike, going back to Rich, I think this is a stroke of genius from the Mercedes driver. I really do. It's not one of the tracks where you get many safety cars. I know we've just had one. But I think this could have handed Rich the race victory here, you know. The hard tyres will definitely go the distance. I'm surprised I didn't see anyone else do this strategy. But so what have we got? We got Rich. Let's have a look at the tyres as well. So Rich can definitely make it to the end. Skrillex is on softs. Forget it. That ain't happening. Leroy has done 2 stops. He's on hard tyres, fresh ones as well. So if he could get himself, he's 40 seconds behind the field at the minute. If he could get himself on the back of this train, Mike, he's sitting in a brilliant position as well.
But here's the thing, okay, Cole, Salu's into the pits as well, so he's getting rid of that 10-second time penalty. I believe he's trying to get rid of the drive-through, but does he have wing damage?
He can't do it. He can't do it under the pit lane. I think he thinks he can get rid of his drive-through penalty, but he can't.
It's wing damage, I think.
Oh, he's changing his... No, he didn't change his wing, Mike. So I think he thought that he could get rid of his drive-through under the safety car, and unfortunately you can't. Unless he's deciding to do a different type of strategy, maybe drag the mediums to the end, maybe, but... he's not sitting in a good place. I don't think it will, Mike. I think that's an error on Salo's part. I think he misjudged when you can take the drive-through.
Yeah, I think potentially he's looked at it and thought he might have had 10 seconds or wanted to get rid of it. But unfortunately, it is a drive-through penalty for Salo, and he can't serve that under the pits. But maybe what he's doing, Cole, is jumping in the pits, taking a set of the mediums, and then maybe he's going to try to jump back in the pits again, put back on the set of the hards. That way then he's done his 2 stops in this race and he can go to the end. Maybe that's the strategy there from Salo.
I think so, but I think unfortunately, Mike, when he comes into the pit lane next, it will force him to do a drive-through and it won't let him box. So I think he's going to find himself in a... Yes, it does. Can Leroy close the gap up enough to get to the back of the pack? It was 48 seconds, it's down to 32. He's currently entering, I'm just seeing where he is at the minute. So he's entering the final chicane before the long straight, and Funky is approaching the hairpin. So he's not too far behind. He should catch them up relatively quickly now. Yes, he can see the back of the pack. He will be at the back of the pack now, Mike.
Yeah, but it depends if the safety car gets the confirmation of his coming into the pits, and there it is. So right there Salu's unfortunately going to have to struggle on in this race. But Cole, we've got a very interesting end to the race coming up. What we're going to have is these guys on the hards, the likes of J. Luke, Jamie, Funky, Quinn. They're going to obviously stretch these out, and they're going to be on much quicker mediums. But look at that for a restart there for J. Luke, immediately getting the jump on Jamie. Jamie caught napping by J. Luke on the restart. J. Luke up into P2. But what I was going to say, Cole, well, Rich can go to the end of the race, and he definitely will from this point on. he, unfortunately, is going to have such a tyre disadvantage on the last stint. Will he be closed up enough? That's going to be the question. It's going to be difficult for Rich to get through the field. And Rich has gone off. Rich has gone off. He's down in the P13. Rich has had a moment there as Skrillex is also down there as well at the back. Salu has, of course, served his drive-through penalty. Jess is being swamped right now by Joe, by JR Mason as well. Jess down to P9. Joe up in the P7 from the last on the grid. Remember, the sprint race winner. He took he didn't take pole position. He took a front row for the sprint race with JR Mason taking pole position. But he's trying to carve his way through the field. J. Luke is in P2, Cole.
This is stunning, Mike. This is huge for the championship. Our race leader is down in 12th at this moment in time. If this race ended, he would have one solitary point. One solitary point. J. Luke, right in the inside. He's going for the lead, Mike. He's in the inside of the hairpin. He a little wide, but he does keep it. He's got it.
Funky's battling though, side by side into the final corner. Funky around the outside, J. Luke on the inside. Funky has to go off track. They're still going to be wheel to wheel. I don't think either of them would have picked up DRS right there. No, they didn't. So this is going to be 3 laps. Oh, actually, no, it wouldn't be DRS yet, but it would be. It would have been 3 lap time for Jamie if there was DRS. That is for sure. But J. Luke trying to hold it around the outside through turn 2 as the inside now for turn number 3, and it looks like Funky might just have the better of the grip. And this is what I was talking about, Cole, with the hard tyres in the first couple of laps. Very tricky to get into temperature and get them into a working window.
Yeah, look how aggressive J. Luke is. He is all desperate to get past. You can feel him saying, "Get out of my way, I first." And there he goes, Mike. He's into first. But look at Jamie. Jamie's now within DRS. He stayed within DRS with those two fighting. Despite his front wing damage, still astonished at his pace with a damaged front wing, Mike. Quinn there up into 4th place. He's had a quiet race, but what a comeback up into 4th place. Proverb overtakes Papa Squanch up into 5th.
Yeah, probably up into 5th place, overtaking Papa Squanch. I'm right now ready and waiting because I know Funky and Luke have both drained their battery in attempts to get themselves in a race leading position. That's allowed Jamie to just sit back and save his battery, and look at the ERS advantage that Jamie has compared to these two.
That is quite significant, Mike. I mean, J. Luke 10%, Jamie 75%, Funky's only got 16, Quinn's only got 10, so Jamie is sitting in a fantastic position. He tries a move on J. Luke, doesn't quite. He's got it. He's done the switchback. Is the move done? I don't think so. Not yet. Jamie hangs it around the outside. Oh, there's a bit of contact. More contact again, but they just about get away with it.
And just a quick reminder on the drivers that, of course, made 2 pit stops. Leroy and Rich making 2 pit stops. Is Leroy, who is the net race leader right now, having made both of his pit stops. He's on the back of this train, and he is nearly 5 seconds clear of Rich right now. And this is showing what happens when you do not have DRS call. Rich is hemorrhaging time to Leroy.
He is, and he's not really gaining on him, to be honest. Leroy's got good pace at this point. Don't forget.
Oh, Leroy.
Oh, he didn't want that. But one thing that we're forgetting, Mike, Rich has done his 2 pit stops. And so's Leroy. Yes, you're right. So's Leroy. So they're sitting in a fantastic position still. They do not want a second safety car. As J. Luke is attempting another maneuver. He decides to stay behind at this stage, Mike.
But Papa Squanch and Proverb, they want to battle it out into the hairpin. They're going to go side by side on the exit. It's going to be Papa Squanch that gets that position. Joe on his recovery drive, starting from the back of the field. The sprint race winner. He's up in the P7. He's got Jess right in behind him. As Joe with the new fast lap of the race. Here comes Proverb looking around the outside of Papa Squanch in towards turn number 1. No, Williams is going to try and send it sailing around the outside, and he might have just gone a little bit too far wide, because that might open the door now for Joe on those medium tyres. And Jess is actually taking advantage of Joe getting all wide, trying to look for a better line on Provo. Jess taking full advantage of that. Up in the P7 goes the Red Bull.
That was fantastic from Jess. That is very uncharacteristically Jess. Usually she's quite calm with the manoeuvres. That was really aggressive, perfectly fair, but very aggressive drive. Bull driver, absolutely brilliant from Jess. She's really season, and it's proven dividends for her. Look at her performances over the last 2 races. Yes, she is on those medium tyres, which will have a performance advantage, but she is really hard.
But the thing is, you got to remember, Cole, is Jess has another set of mediums waiting for her because she has already done her hard stint in the first stint. And that will allow Jess to stay on the quicker tyre for the remainder of this race. And it's all going to be about whether or not she's going to be able to carve her way through the likes of Papa Squanch, the likes of Jamie and J. Luke side by side on the exit of the hairpin, and Jamie's up in the P2. Quinn kind of blocked off. You're going to see Papa Squanch close up a little bit by about 2 tenths. He's just outside the DRS. Now he tucks just inside the DRS range, but he's not going to have it down the start finish straight. And now Jess is in the train, the DRS train, for the race lead.
And sorry to interrupt there, Mike, but Jamie, the McLaren driver, with a broken front wing, I may add, is leading this. He's just passed Funky into turn 1, and he is actually already pulled out nearly half a second. Brilliant manoeuvre from the McLaren driver. I know that he changed a few controller settings, and it's, look at the difference. He was really struggling in the first half season, but it's really come back to him now, and he leads China on lap 16.
Yeah, this could be a huge result for Jamie, and honestly, in the chat, let me know, do you think it'll be Jamie, Funky or J. Luke on the top step of the podium? And if you don't think there's any of them, let me know who you think is going to get the race win. Of course, we're on lap 16 to 28, there's still plenty of racing to go, so nothing is set in stone just yet. Knock on wood, no more safety cars, knock on wood, no more retirements, and we're going to get a good race to the end of the action. But let me know in the chat, who is your money on? Is it on Jamie? Is it on Funky? Is it on J. Luke? Is it on Jess, Joe, Mason? Do you think Rich and Leroy's strategy will play into fruition? Will they get the race victory? Let me know in the chat right now, guys.
One thing I'm very, very impressed with at the minute is Leroy's pace. He is pulling away from Rich. Joe is in the pit lane now, so that promotes Leroy up into 10th place. But going back to what I was saying, Leroy's actually pulling away from Rich. He was about 4.2 seconds. It's now up to 5.3, Mike. Leroy is having great pace on these hard tyres.
Yeah, absolutely. And Joe has now made his second pit stop, but you see he's gone into a set of the hards. He's gone medium hard in this race, and he is going to have the lap advantage over Leroy and Rich in this race. Joe will, but I just think he's too far behind. That the advantage he's going to have, he is going to close up, but I don't think he's going to be closing up enough at the rate of knots that he needs to get the positions that he needs to increase his gap in the second place currently, and of course close the gap on Rich, where he will be absolutely aiming to do so. He's around about 13 seconds off the back of Rich right now.
Yeah, he is slowly but surely bringing it back in, but it's a lot to do, Mike. Just looking at the chat, Penny says J. Luke for the win. Can he do it? He's actually in the inside of Jamie. Jamie trying to hang it around the outside, and still manages it. But J. Luke up into second place as he's in the pit lane.
Yeah, this will be for a set in the mediums, of course, wanting to make sure he does not get undercut in this race, and he needs to give himself the best chance of catching his teammate, the championship leader Rich, who's come through the final corner now, down the start finish straight. You're going to see he's going to pass J. Luke now, and we're going to see where Joe is going to be relative to J. Luke. Of course, Joe going for the undercut. I think he's going to come up behind J. Luke in the proceedings, and J. Luke on those mediums should be able to continuously pull away. And yet, there we go. J Luke's already halfway through turn number 1. 3.5 seconds, 3 seconds the gap between J Luke and Joe in this race now, Cole.
Yeah, so if J Luke wants to catch up to Joe, he's about 10 seconds behind. It's 10 laps to go. Simple maths, he needs to catch him up 1 second per lap to get within an overtaking opportunity. Can he do it on these fresh mediums? Rich on 8-lap old hards. J-Luke on brand new medium tyres. Mike, this one's going to go down to the wire.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's not forget Leroy's penalty could also be a factor late into this race. Once his tyres begin to fall away, same as Rich's tyres will fall away. Leroy's penalty could potentially cost him a possible race win here, but we'll have to wait and see. So we are expecting to see more of the leaders coming into the pits. Papa Squan's getting through on Probib. Up into P4 goes Papa Squan's. Will Jess jump into the pits now? 8 laps done on those medium tyres. Will she opt for another set? Yes, she will. Into the pits comes Jess. Same with Jamie. Does Jamie get that front wing replaced finally? That's going to be
I don't think he'll bother, Mike. I think it's, to be honest, his pace doesn't require it. I think all he'll do is lose too much time and not enough to gain it back. So I don't think he is. There's Jess back on a second set of brand new mediums. Like you said, Mike, Quinn on some new mediums, Jamie on some new mediums as well, as Joe sets the fastest lap of the race down in 13th place.
Yeah, and Joe has got the jump on Quinn and Jess on the undercut. But Quinn and Jess are on fresh mediums versus Joe's slightly rubbered in now hard compound tyres. So Joe will have him at the temperature. He will have him in a working operating window now. But the grip advantage you'll have just being on the mediums at this stage in the race is just going to be immense. And I don't know if Joe's going to have enough to keep these guys in behind.
No, I think it's going to be very difficult for Joe on those hard compound tyres to be able, like you said, Mike, to keep the two guys behind. It's doable, but it's going to be very, very difficult. Salo there and having a lonely second half to this race. He is catching Guest, but he's got a lot of work to do to get back into the points. Mason there on 10 lap old hard, same as the top 3. Look at J Luke on Skrillex.
And there we go. We did mention how much J Luke has to close in by. He's closed in by almost 3 seconds in a lap, Cole.
Yeah, he has gained so much on Rich in just a couple of laps. It just shows how effective brand new mediums are compared to the old hards. It's going to be so difficult for. I think it's going to be so difficult for Rich to keep him behind, but he's still got a couple of cars in between him as the Papa Squanch, Proverb and Matthias are in the pit lane, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely, and they are going to come out behind the legs of Jess, behind the legs of Quinn, and Jess will be happy to get the jump on Papa Squanch and be in this battle right now with Quinn and Joe. Jamie is on the back of Skrillex, and remember, Jamie is about 1.5 seconds behind J Luke in this race. Look at the gap between J Luke and Rich. Remember, Leroy is still the net race leader though.
Yes, I think, to be honest though, I don't think Rich is Leroy's problem. I think it's J Luke. He's got the gap down to 5.7 seconds with 8 laps to go. He could quite easily get Rich and Leroy at this stage. Jamie there staying in good contact, just 2 seconds behind J Luke. And he's got Skrillex just outside DRS.
Well, this is where things are going to get interesting now, Cole. Because by the time J Luke gets onto the back of Rich, those mediums are going to begin to feel a little bit
Sorry to interrupt. We got 3 drivers stuck together.
Oh my God.
It was Joe, Quinn, and I think Skrillex, yeah. The 3 of them come together down the main straight. They all interlock wheels and just about managed. I think we have got some damage, I think, to their front wing end plates, but disaster for the drivers.
And ladies and gentlemen, I can confirm everyone has made their mandatory 2 stops in this race. And Jess sets the new fastest lap. Jess is on a mission. She comes out just behind Funky. And this is where I think Jess and Funky need to work together, because they can DRS trade with each other to close up to Jamie. Jamie has wing damage. He is still quick even with the wing damage, but the middle sector is where you're going to be able to gain time on him. The straights, they can gain time on him by DRS trading as well. So don't rule the likes of Jess and Funky out of a podium just yet. Lap 21 of 28. Leroy leads the way. He has a time penalty, which does mean he's vulnerable to Rich in behind. Rich right now, 11 lap old hard tyres. He is technically in position to take the race win, but 3.6 seconds behind is the second Mercedes, the charging J. Luke in this championship fight. Remember, he joined the championship a few races into the season. He's taken 2 race wins and a second place so far in his efforts so far in P2. And we saw these Mercedes drivers get tangled up on each other. They came into contact in the sprint race, and it looks like they're about to do battle for the feature race victory as well, Cole.
Yes, as I look back through the field, and Jess has just got into the top 5, passing Funky, showing some great pace now into the top 5 as she hunts down Jamie. But look at the gap now, Mike, just 2.7 seconds. Rich only 2.1 behind Leroy. Leroy with that 3-second will demote him at this stage behind Rich.
Yeah, absolutely, and this is where things are going to start to get very interesting, folks. We are getting to the point now where the medium tyres, they are going to begin to just drop off in terms of the amount of time that Luke is going to be gaining on Rich per lap. So we're not going to see a few seconds gained every single lap now. We're going to start to see maybe close to a second to around about half a second gained, which will still be enough for J. Luke to get onto the back of Rich. You see it now, 1.8 the gap, 1.7, 1.6. It is closing, but with the remaining laps in this race, J. Luke's tyres are going to begin to fall away from him. Will that bring Rich back into it? And how will the Mercedes garage be able to cope with these two drivers after what happened in the sprint race call? Because they came into contact and it looks like they're about to go at it once again.
It really does look that way. I'm just looking at Jamie now. He is catching them up. If he could get just a couple of seconds further up the road, he could sneak ahead of Leroy as well. So don't forget, the drivers ahead, they're going to be fighting soon. Mike, J. Luke, he's in DRS now.
Yeah, he absolutely is. And Rich, the championship leader. J. Luke, probably the most informed driver in P2 right now. Both of them are teammates. Both of them came into contact with each other in the sprint race. And now, ladies and gentlemen, get your popcorn out as the Mercedes are about to do battle once again here in Shanghai.
Here we go then. He's right behind them. Is he going to have a go down in the hip? Yes, he is. And look at that. That was relatively straightforward, Mercedes driver. He does try it. Oh, not quite. Now, can J. Luke chase after the leading Ferrari driver, Leroy? He's already in the net. But can he catch him up and get first on the road? Jamie is nearly in DRS of Rich.
Yeah, and I think the soft tyres, both Mercs have stopped twice. Rich made his second pit stop underneath the safety car proceedings, and what we've got right now is Jamie now getting onto the back of Rich in this race. Remember, Jamie has wing damage. He has been missing that end plate since the first stint of this race, and if Rich and Jamie can stay with J. Luke for a few laps, they'll be in the DRS range of Leroy. And that could make things very spicy, Cole. Jess, 2.5 seconds off the back. I think if Rich falls behind Jamie and falls away, then Jess might be able to snag potential P4 from Rich, which will help her in the championship hunt. But also, if they can get close enough to Leroy as well, they might be able to jump his 3-second time penalty.
Yes, as Jamie goes round the outside. Round turn 2, and he's got it done already. Jamie is past Rich.
Fantastic there from Jamie, getting the move done on Rich. Up into P3 goes Jamie, and Jamie within the 3-second range of Leroy as well. So Jamie right now in a net P2 in this race. Rich, though, he's going to have more issues because just who's outside the DRS range is Jess Ball in the Red Bull, trying to charge down a podium finisher in the closing stages of Shanghai. As Leroy's at the moment. Leroy's off. Leroy is off. Safety car.
It's a safety car. This is huge, Mike. Massive. Surely you box for softs. Or do you? What a decision to make for these drivers. Leroy has completely lost all his front wing. Jess gets 10 seconds. Now, she should be able now. I would have thought, Mike, that could get removed. Now, unless she obviously overtook under yellow flags, but which I don't think she did. The only person she would have done would have been Leroy.
Yeah,
so I would have thought she could get that removed.
But she'd have to stay out for that, though.
Oh, Mike, that's a very, very good point. Yeah, so obviously if she boxes now, let's see what they do. J-Luke in the pit lane. Jamie in the pit lane. Rich carries on. Jess is in the pit lane. That's a mistake from the Red Bull driver there, Mike. I think... and she gets 10 and she gets another one. That's disaster. What does Mason do? Mason carries on. So Mason carries on. Who else have we got carrying on? We've got Quinn carrying on, Matthias, Papa Squanch, Funky. Do you know what? I think J-Luke could have thrown this race victory away.
Potentially, we're going to have to wait and see because Rich right now, obviously the championship leader, leads the way, but his tyres are old. They are done. Like, they have absolutely no grip versus the tyres that will be used on the cars around him. Funky right now is in prime position to take the race win here. Papa Squanch, he's had a quiet race all throughout Shanghai so far. He's in position to potentially take a race win. Matase in P4, Quinn in P5, but obviously Mason in P6 after what happened with him earlier. It's Lukey and Macmillan in the chat. Commenting on Jess making the pit stop. Obviously, if it was me, I probably would have stayed out to try to get the 10-second removed unless it was a legit 10-second which she was trying to get rid of. Maybe that was the case for Jess and why she boxed. We'll have to wait and see, but yeah, I mean, it's going to be very interesting. You got J-Luke, who is absolutely going to be rapid. Did Jamie change that front wing under the safety car? No, he did not. So Jamie is not going to... He's not going to be worrying too much. He's going to try to use those soft tyres to the best of his ability. Now, Cole. Geest is only coming through turns 2 right now. We are going to have, I think, 1, maybe 2 laps of racing.
Yeah, I think that's all we're going to get, Mike. So I think the drivers who stayed out, some of them, I would say, have probably made the right decision. J-Luke, I think was an error, but I'm surprised I didn't see everyone box bar Jess. I was very surprised to see any driver stay out.
Well,
but to be honest,
so
it's the right call, I think.
I understand why Rich stayed out. He was behind J-Luke. J-Luke would have held him up in the pits. He would have lost a few positions due to that. So I understand Rich staying out. I also understand the likes of Funky, Papa Squanch, they're like staying out. Remember, they're on relatively fresh mediums. Well, yes, the softs are a grippier tyre. In terms of the incentive of trying to get yourself a little bit further up the order in terms of finishing position, boxing for a set of softs kind of solidifies them around where they were in this race. So I understand the logic for the likes of Funky, Papa Squanch to climb themselves up the order, Quinn, Mason. But J-Luke was in a tough position. He had to make this call. He had to make that call. He had the tyres to make sure he could still pull away from the likes of Rich. But if he had obviously stayed out, Rich would have come in, Jamie would have come in, and you probably would have seen majority of the drivers come in as well. It would have been interesting to see what would have happened with Jess if Jess had stayed out. It looks like Jess
such a shame.
Got rid of that second 10-second time penalty as well. So Jess, no penalties to her name, down in 14th place now. What could have been for the Red Bull, as Lukey there saying DRS activated on the final lap, and that is going to be so intriguing. Safety car is in this lap. We're going to have 2 laps of racing to go. Cole, who is your money on? We got 2 laps of racing. Who's your money on?
Not a flipping clue. I'm actually going to go and with Lukey's choice in the chat, which is Papa Squanch. He's going to be my punt, Mike.
Do you know what? I actually don't mind that shout. Me personally, I think potentially we could see Funky on the top step of the podium. But let us not rule out the soft runners. J. Luke, Jamie, those 2 have had incredible pace so far in this race. They're on the fastest compound possible. They're at the lightest fuel possible that they would have in terms of the race fuel. There's going to be some qualifying laps coming in from all these people on the softs right now. And it's going to be a case of, can these guys in front on the older, slower tyres, can they hold off? Ladies and gentlemen, 2 laps to go here in Shanghai. Rich gets us back in the way as we go back to green flag racing again here in Shanghai. Lap 27 of 28. Hold on tight. It's about to get serious as Funky closing in on Rich. Not going to go for the overtake though. In towards turn number 1. Might try to set it up for turn number 2 perhaps. And remember, the slowness of these tyres is going to bunch everyone up. Here comes Mattis around the outside, turns to the inside for turn number 3 on Papa Squanch, but Papa Squanch able to hold on to that. Jamie getting through on J. Luke, and now, there you go, the McLaren switcheroo. Thank you, teammate, and thank you very much. And up in the P6 goes Jamie on his charge, and there goes J. Luke, tries to follow Jamie through around the outside. There's the grip of the soft tyres coming into play for the Mercedes. And ladies and gentlemen, now we're going to see what Jamie and J. Luke can do as Quinn and Jamie side by side in the S's. Look at this, J. Luke tries to go all the way on the outside, and that's fantastic stuff from both Jamie and J. Luke as they climb up the order into 5th and 6th. Ladies and gentlemen, it is not over and done with for these 2 just yet. As look at this, Jamie sending one on the inside and Matters. As Mason cuts the corner, goes straight into J. Luke, and that is definitely going to be something that the stewards will look at. That is for sure. All eyes now on Jamie, and look at this at the front call. Papa Squanch, Funky, and Rich all going down in towards the hairpin. Mattis closing in, and Jamie's in prime position as well. Jamie going to try to outbrake Mattis down the inside. It's almost 3 wide at the hairpin, and look at that.
Jamie up to 3rd. He does 2 in 1, Mike. Jamie is in a hell to win this race, Mike. He's got 2 drivers ahead of him on old tyres. This is Jamie's for the taking. Can he do it with DRS enabled on the last lap?
Well, you must find out, because here goes Funky clean around the outside of Rich, and there goes Jamie clean around the outside of Rich as well. Those hard tyres are absolutely done in this race, but Rich, he is ahead of all of his championship rivals. That's all he cares about right now. As we're on the final lap of the race, my voice is beginning to go cold. As we got Jamie looking down the inside of Funky in towards turn number 6. Jamie getting the move done and sorted. Wing damage throughout the entirety of this race. Jamie leads on the final lap, but Funky will have one opportunity with DRS down the back straight, and J. Luke is on the back of Papa Squanch, who is on the back of Rich here for the final podium position. And it looks like Papa Squanch might have looked on the inside of Rich here, and that's going to allow J. Luke to try and follow him through the side by side the Mercedes pairing. Let's hope that they do not make contact this time around. And it looks like J. Luke is going to get the move done on his teammate Rich. But I don't think Rich is going to mind this too much, because Rich is not losing a huge amount compared to J. Luke in terms of the amount of points. But Funky gets back through on Jamie. Jamie's going to try to outbrake the Aston Martin. Way too late on the brakes, so my liking there from Jamie. And that is going to allow Jamie to get the position. But look at this, Funky on the exit.
Brilliant!
Not going to be able to do it.
Absolutely
Jamie
brilliant!
Takes victory ahead of Funky in 2nd place. J. Luke completes the podium. Papa Squanch in 4th, Rich in 5th, Mattis in 6th, Salu, good recovery up in the 7th, Jess up in the 8th, Quinn down in 9th, probably 10th, Geese 7th, JR Mason in 12th, Leroy in 13th, Squillex 14th, and Joe, the last of the finishers, in 15th, and Lukey in the chat saying, think that'll be a pen for Jamie. And
it's going to be a difficult one. It's a very difficult. It did look late. I should have gone on board, actually. It would have been a bit easier. But To be honest, Mike, when he passed him, I said, don't to myself, not now, Jane, not now. Wait till that DRS straight. I think he went too soon. I would have waited until that DRS straight. He had plenty of time, but we'll have to see whether that will be in the stewards, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another incident maybe in the stewards, we could be seeing JR Mason in not for one instant but two instances where it looks like he's missed his braking point and has had to make contact with one of the drivers. Unfortunately, Jay Luke was the driver that got caught up into that, and Jay Luke's argument would be, if that didn't happen, he had an opportunity of winning this race. But let us go through the order one more time. It is Jamie that takes victory here in China ahead of Funky in second place. Jay Luke completes the podium. Papa Squanch in P4 with Rich, the championship leader, in P5. Matase in P6 with Salu in P7. Jess in P8 with the fastest lap. Ninth is Quinn. Probab completing the top 10. Outside the top 10 we have Geese in 11th. JR Mason in 12th, Leroy in 13th, Skrillex in 14th, 15th goes the way of Joe, and our only DNF here tonight was M125. And in terms of the fastest lap outside of the top 10, it is going to go the way of JR Mason. So JR Mason will collect the point for fastest lap outside of the top 10 call, and it might be needed with what could be in the stewards from him.
It could be. It's probably the scruffiest race I've seen from Mason. Outbraked himself on numerous occasions. Don't know whether it might be screen freezes, possibly, but I know he's never experienced that before, so I think he just probably made a driver error. But what a race that was. Mike, I had the opportunity last week of picking first for driver of the day. Over to you, Mike.
So, now, normally I get to go second on this one. But if I got to give driver of the day to someone, I'm leaning towards Jay Luke for driver of the day, because the action that him and Rich gave us in the sprint, as well as the way that he was coming for the field after taking his engine and gearbox penalty, a huge drive from Jay Luke. He would be my pick for driver of the day. And my question to Jay Luke is, a very interesting time in China, contact with your teammate in the sprint race, and then of course in the feature a comeback drive through the field. Unfortunately, wasn't able to get the race win. But when you made that pit stop, did you think you threw away all hopes of the race win because there were drivers that stayed out under that last safety car?
That's a very well-deserved driver of the day nomination. Mine has to go to Jamie. Yes, he might get a penalty for that hairpin. Obviously, we have to wait and see on the footage. Maybe he was 50% alongside in the braking zone before Funky was turning in. That we have to wait and see for the stewards to have a look at. But for him to go the entire race with front wing damage and have the kind of pace that he had, absolutely astonishing. So my question for you, Jamie, was what did at any point during that race you attempted to change the front wing? Or was the plan all along just to cope with the damage and continue racing?
We'll be very interested to see what happens. Of course, other than the final lap at the hairpin, I mean, Jamie drove an incredible race with that wing damage and a well-deserved nomination, in my opinion. It will be interesting to see what happens. I believe an honourable mention should be also to Funky as well. Obviously, he kept it clean, he kept himself in the right positions at the right time, and he's walking away with a P2 finish, but it could be up in the air whether or not he gets any more than that. So we will have to wait and see. Guys, in around about 10 minutes time, in fact less than 10 minutes time, we will be heading to the action in P1, where of course it will be Jess and J. Cole taking you through the action on that. Cole, next week we have a break week, I believe, and then we'll be back in a fortnight's time.
Yes, so next Sunday is Mother's Day here in the UK, so we know that a lot of people will be celebrating that, so we do have a week break, and we'll be back for Japan. Just a little bit of inside information. Jamie has asked the stewards to give Funky the win, please. He wanted to let him through, but had no time. So that will mean that Funky is tonight's winner.
Very, very honourable there from Jamie in doing that, because I think Jamie also realised that, you know, maybe a little bit too hot on the brakes, and you know, mistakes are made, and he doesn't want to win like that. But that is very good of Jamie to put that forward. But yeah, Cole, next time we go racing in a fortnight's time, it is going to be at Suzuka, a personal favourite of mine, a track that does provide a lot of good racing if you put the practice in. That is the big thing. It is a proper driver circuit is Suzuka.
It is one of my favourite tracks to drive. Mike, I know it's your... I cannot wait for Japan. Not only for the P2 race, but obviously looking forward to watching you race in P1, Mike, as it is your best track by quite some margin. And don't forget, 7 o'clock, so in approximately 5 minutes, the P1 race will kick off.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, before we wrap things up here tonight, massive shout out to our sponsors and partners, Next Level Racing, at Pure Sim Gear, to Vespertwin as well, and of course Sim Grid, and last but not least, the Mental Health Foundation. Guys, if you do need to talk, make sure you do talk to someone. It is never good to suffer in silence. But with that, Cole, it brings an end to the action here in P2. We will be back with One Hub Racing in a fortnight's time at Suzuka, but in 5 minutes time we head to the action in P1, as it is lights out and away we go there once again. But I've been Michael Edwards, he's been Colin Mason, and we'll catch you in a fortnight's time at Suzuka. It is goodbye from the pair of us.
Good night.